Hey, labia lovers. Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode that is pretty laden with TMI and courageous sharing from my ex, Max. Max has returned to the potty this week to tell us about his first time sucking a dick. And we get stuck into some pretty cool conversations about how that was for him, his favourite BJ technique tips, his relationship to his sexuality and masculinity, and learnings and realisations we've both had through exploring our sensuality with members of the same sex. So while we acknowledge this in the episode as well, I just wanted to pop a caveat at the top here. To talk about the fact that we are well aware that as two very straight, cis individuals, we have a pretty limited scope of experience and understanding when it comes to discussing the topic of queerness. And so we don't try to represent or speak for the queer community. Rather, we chat pretty deeply about our personal experience with our forays into this realm of sexuality and how that's been for us, through the very privileged lens of people who haven't actually had to contend with the stigma, the marginalisation, shame, or the very real danger that people who have grown up queer live in as their reality full time. The fact that we have the luxury and the privilege to quote unquote experiment with our sexuality and explore fluidity is very obvious to us, and we don't take this for granted or want anyone to feel as though we're fetishizing being queer or sexually fluid. While going back to our very hetero comfort zones. But I just wanted to get Max on to chat about his first experience sucking a dick, because I think it's really cool and valuable to hear about someone who's comfortable enough with themselves that they feel safe to explore in this way despite being straight. And yeah, maybe the very fact that he was interested in sucking a dick at all could be seen as him not being straight, but whatever. They're just labels. We don't fucking care. And I think you'll understand once you listen to the epi. The other thing I wanted to say is that because of our personal inexperience with queerness and our relative ignorance in this realm, there may be blind spots that we're not aware that we have. And therefore, if we say something, that you feel is problematic or naive or that rubs you the wrong way in this episode, we'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on how we could do better and represent these topics with more sensitivity and more awareness. We're not perfect. And as I'm always saying, I'm just human trying to do my best, but of course I'm going to fuck up. And I'm always open to hearing how I could do better if you have a more informed perspective on something that I could use a deeper understanding of. So please get in touch if you have any words for us after listening to this episode, or any episodes for that matter. Like, I'm always open to hearing how I could improve and represent topics and different sorts of people better, because I am only one person who's had one, set of life experiences. And even though I try to be sensitive to this and I try to look at things through multiple different lenses, there's only so much scope that I've really got based on my own experience and research and whatever else. So lastly, there's a point in this episode where I say the word unrelevant, and I just want to make sure everyone's aware that I do know that the word is irrelevant, but that was an inside joke between Max and I, and I'm such a grammar Nazi that, and I'm obviously not immune to fear of judgment, so I just wanted to clarify that I'm not a dum-dum, and I do know that the correct term is irrelevant, so please enjoy.
This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your friends with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Can never help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up. You're about to receive the sex ed that you never had, and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we get stuck in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Menang people. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content on Noongar country, and I pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, if you're all ready, let's flap and do this. Oh God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, I'm leaving it in. It's my podcast.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up a couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
What's up, Labia Ledge Hammers, Ledge Chalerinos? Back in the lounge. We've got, don't give me that look. We've got Max. I think it's is it your third time on the Labia Lounge? Welcome, Max.
This is my second time. Thank you for having me.
And I think that this episode, pretty true to our first or your first appearance on this podcast, is going to be very TMI.
TMI, we love it. Said TMI, we love it.
And to give everyone the backstory, I received a little message from Max recently, which I was pretty excited to receive because it's been about 8 years in the coming. And he was just like, hey, guess what? I sucked my first dick on the weekend. And I was like, what? Because ever since probably before we were together, but I remember back when we were together, you used to talk about this sort of desire to one day just at least experience that and give sucking dick a go. And, you know, even though you're super duper straight and don't particularly feel any inclination or romantic draw or sexual draw to men, you were like, well, I feel like I'd be really good at sucking dick because I've got a dick and it just feels like something that I want to do. It's on the bucket list. And but yeah, it was always going to have to be a very specific context, and it wasn't something that you were looking for as much as, you know, hoping that one day it would fall into your lap in the perfect circumstance with all of the stars aligning. And apparently that did happen. So do you want to just tell us what the circumstances needed to be for this long overdue dick sucking opportunity, and then we'll get stuck into what actually ended up happening?
Yeah. So, well, I suppose to give a little context, where to begin? So, yeah, my sexuality is straight. I'm straight. Let the record show.
Yeah. Stock standard.
Yeah, just general, just your average straight guy. But I'm secure in that. I got nothing to prove, and I feel quite fortunate because I live in a particular pocket of society where I don't have to feel any shame about any aspect of my, you know, completely normal sexuality, or any sexual inclination that I might have. It's all normal. It's all above board. It's all celebrated. And so it's no real challenge to me. It's not a challenge to my identity to think about engaging sexually with a man. It is what I think. This is my hot take on heterosexuality, that it doesn't preclude homosexual sexual engagements. In fact, it should actually just mean indifference to homosexual engagements, right? It means I'm attracted to people of the opposite sex. It doesn't mean I'm disgusted by people of the same sex. It should just be what is it? Doesn't mean anything to me. It's just a dick. I don't have feelings towards those. But I think that, you know, it's just tied in with how we're socialized, I suppose. And, you know, there's all kinds of shame around these things. And, you know, across the world and historically, it's been fucking really hard to be gay and really frowned upon. And those people have been marginalized, and still are. But, yeah, you know, there is a burgeoning kind of sexual consciousness in some pockets of society that means that I can kind of do what I want. I don't have to worry about it. And I've got, you know, people around me like you and every friend that I have that I could be like, hey, guess what? I did this thing that if we lived in a different time in a different place, like it would be the deepest shame it could like, you know, present.
You could get killed for. Yeah.
Yeah. I might even fucking like, you know, do myself in for, like, you know, if I were gay and if it's something that I really struggled with. But I don't have those problems. So I feel like going into this, I'm pretty self-congratulatory about the whole thing for sure, but I also feel like I need to acknowledge that. Also need to acknowledge that that's like really it speaks to
privileged
the world that I live in, and so I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, I'm a straight person, and I found that being with women, for me anyway, being with women seems a lot easier because I think I have an inherent trust of women, which might stem from my relationship with my mum. And also it could be that women are generally safer people. And I have a much easier time trusting women. In fact, I trust them implicitly. And that's something that's never backfired on me. There's never really been a huge challenge to that trust, maybe here and there, but in general, no. But with men, I'm quite wary of men, you know, because, you know, men have got a bit of a rep. And so for years I've had this idea about exploring, you know, betesticled bodies and seeing what dicks are about, and a bit of a dick fascination, like a penile fascination. It's not really about the men. In fact, if they could just not be a man but have a penis, that would sort of be the ideal. But you know, just sort of accepted that like a dick I might get involved with, you know, it would likely be attached to a man, and a gay man. And so I've had these needs around, and the needs have been quite inhibited around engaging with sex things with dudes. Like I've met a couple dudes over the years who've been really nice, and had some makeouts here and there, and sort of vaguely kind of gone to pursue something with that, and it's sort of petered out. Haven't really stuck to it. Like haven't really had enough focus on the
end game,
the sexual expedition. Sorry,
the end game.
What'd you say?
Sucking dick end game.
Yeah. Sucking dick end game. It's really funny. I don't want to get too tangential here, but it was I remember the first time. Actually, you were there when we're at Meredith, and we're up the front, and I started talking to this guy that I had like known a few years earlier, like through a friend, and we're just talking shit and having a nice time, like high as balls on MDMA. He was a really lovely guy who I won't name him here. But he was like, "Hey, you want to make out?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, let's do it." And we're making out. And this is a really formative moment for like this whole thing. In fact, it's not quite where it started, but a lot of things were crystallized in that moment where I realized that as much as I don't feel that like kind of root kind of, you know, like in the loins kind of feeling towards men, and I seem to predominantly feel that feeling towards like women and like, you know, breasts and vulvas and stuff like that. It showed me that there is actually an entire world within sex that I'm enjoying that is not even about that feeling in like in the root, you know, in the down there around all of that, the kind of epicenter of sexual energy or whatever, which is that I love sensuality, I love pleasure giving, I love it when people are attracted to me or turned on by me, and all these things can be satisfied without me needing to be gay. Like needing to feel that feeling of like, oh yeah, so into this. It's like, I'm so into the fact that he's so into this. Like, it was really hot, and in a different way to like how I had experienced, like, you know, in my hetero sex life. And it was pretty funny because like afterwards I was like, yeah, I've been thinking a little bit about like exploring some gay stuff, and like, you know, like vaguely kind of keeping my ear to the ground for someone that I could do that with. You know, just like, I don't know, sucking dick or whatever. Is that something that like you would be interested in helping me out with? And he was like, oh yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. It's super funny. I was saying this the other day when I sent you all the voice memos about it, that I was just like, what a gracious man. What a lovely man that he would do something so selfless. And then thinking about it years down the track, it's like someone that he's attracted to was just like, hey, like maybe sometime I could suck your dick. And he was like, yes. And it's like, no shit. Like, he's not doing me any favors. It's like there's a mutuality there, you know, like we're both getting something out of it. So it's pretty funny to be like, no one's doing, like, I think in most cases when someone's attracted to you and you offer to suck their dick, like they're not doing you a favor. Like, you know, you hopefully you're both enjoying yourselves, and that's how sex should be, I suppose. Yeah. And then from that point, I never ended up chasing things up with him. I think that once the MDMA wore off, maybe some like inhibition came back, and I was like, oh yeah, you know, I don't know, like.
Well, it's one thing to like be in the right place at the right time with the right mood, and you're, you know, it's all kind of happening in a way that makes it super easy and like lays it out on a silver platter for you. Like if that dick was on a silver platter then and there, you know, and you weren't in the middle of a mosh pit, you know, with me sort of hovering, being like, holy fuck, Max is making up with that dude right there. I feel like really weird and uncomfortable and triggered, but also I don't have any like, what? Because I think we'd only half, and I was like, what is going on? So, you know, it wasn't exactly on a silver platter. It was like, sweet, you know, like you can Uber Eats this later once we've gotten back to the real world, but, you know, you didn't really do that. So, you know, it's never been the right place, right time, but the inclination and the willingness has been there for you, but it's just like the right circumstances and the right person and the safety and the connection and all of that has to be there. And that's why it was so exciting when, like, literally several years later, you know, just the other day I got this message from you and you were like, I sucked a dick. And I was like, whoa, it's happened. Like all of the stars have aligned. All of these elements have kind of like fallen into place perfectly for this to be. And I feel I've always felt similarly with my sexual adventurousness, because I'm also just so boringly straight. Definitely like, you know, fluid enough to be like, oh, that's pretty hot if I see like, you know, a sex scene in a movie and there's, you know, like blue is the warmest color. I reckon that's the first and only time I've ever masturbated to something on the screen, because I don't watch porn or anything, but like blue is the warmest color. There's that sex scene in it with two lesbians, and I was just like, whoa, that is super hot. But apart from that.
Oh, it sounds pretty gay, Freya. It sounds pretty gay of you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was pumped. I was like, sick. This is exciting. This opens up a whole new world. And I had the same feeling as you did around like when I first made out with a girl. And it was literally just because it had all the right place, right time. Somehow it all just came into play. And it wasn't, because usually that sort of thing is, I don't know, feels unsafe or intimidating for me. It's not my like comfort zone. It's not like I actually find sometimes if I've had, you know, chicks come up and be really sort of coming onto me or like pushing a lot of like sexual energy or keenness at me, I'm a bit like, whoa, fuck, I don't know what to do with that. Like I'm used to dudes throwing that shit towards me, but I'm not used to that coming from females. And because it's not sort of a familiar place for me or something that I'm generally reciprocating, I'm a bit like off put and a bit kind of intimidated by like the force of like female horniness. I'm like, whoa, oh my God, no, get away from me. So when it happened in a safe way with like someone who I really cared about, but like it wasn't weird because, you know, it was a whole different sitch, but I was just like, oh my God, this has completely opened up a whole new world of like sexuality and exploration of my sexual identity and sensuality, and it was really exciting. And I was like, I'm going to be so fucking queer now. Like I've just opened this can of worms. I'm going to get out there. And like, I didn't because it never really like fell on a silver platter for me again. And so I've never like fucked a woman. Like never really done more than kissing, and squeezing some nice soft boobies. So it's all very like above the waist and pretty boring, unfortunately. I wanted to explore that more, but I didn't want it badly enough to like seek it out. And it's very, 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 very rare that I'm actually attracted to a woman in that way or enough to go there. So it just kind of never happened. But I do remember that feeling of like, oh my God, this is titillating. This is so expansive, thinking that now my like the sort of pool of people that I could explore with has just expanded so much, and it's diversified overnight because now I've kissed a chick and I liked it, like, so I feel you on and in fact I named this episode, like, I don't know what I'll call it, when I publish it, but on the call, the meeting name was Max sucked a dick and he liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I saw that.
So anyway, take it away.
And I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I relate very much to everything that you're saying. Like it is this alignment of factors. Yeah, like if I had like, if there was like some like a nice sexy lady that I knew that I was like seeing or like, had met or something, and it was like, hey, let's catch up in like a week's time and like sleep together, then I'd be like, yep, cool. And I could go through all kinds of different fluxes of, like feeling horny, not feeling horny, and be pretty much at the end of the week, like feel quite assured that I would still be down to do that. But it's like this sort of, yeah, like solar eclipse kind of, everything needs to be in the right place, and everything, like the mood needs to be right. I need to be in the right mood, and like they need to be the right person. They need to look the right way. They need to behave the right way. They need to have the right energy. Like it all needs to be very specific.
And wait,
so
hang on. Did this actually happen? This was like a few days ago, and the solar eclipse over in Western Australia here like did happen a few days ago. I'm just trying to work out, do you know if it actually lined up with the solar eclipse? It was very close.
It didn't. I don't remember there being. I mean, I guess it wasn't visible from
Melbourne. I think it was on the 20th.
It would have been pretty fantastic to be giving my first blowy at the solar eclipse.
Totally.
No. It was last weekend. It was last weekend. It was actually. It was, about 6 hours ago. It would have been exactly a week ago.
Wow. Okay. How special.
Yeah. Yes. So, so it's sort of this pursuit. It's kind of hard to call it a pursuit because it hasn't been a very active one. It's been bouncing around my mind for years, and been in conversation with a few people. I've got a good friend who's a particularly randy gay man who's like all about it, and he's constantly urging me in ways that are maybe a little unhelpful. To kind of get involved, and he's like, just get on Grindr, just like get someone to pull up behind your house in their car and like just go in there and suck their dick, and I'm like, and those conversations have helped me realize exactly what it is that I do need, which is I need rapport, I need trust, it's not as simple for me to do it like that. Moving forward a few years, I guess that would have been in 2016 or 2017 when we were at Meredith. So it was a fucking while ago. So I was at a party last Saturday, and it was a really great party. I didn't quite know my place with it. Like maybe people were a bit younger, or like I don't know. I was
No,
just
unrelevant.
in a particular place of conversation.
Unrelevant. No,
Yeah, no. Oh, sorry. I'm doing.
Get to the
Yeah. No, sorry. Absolutely. It all started. We already went back 7 years. I don't need to give I just like setting the scene. No, okay.
I know.
Well,
I know. Max loves to pontificate. I feel like I reserve the right after dating you for several years to pull you up when you're faffing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you had this whole thing where I'd be crapping on about something, and you actually we'd agreed that you had full license to say, "Stop talking about that now," and I'd be like, "Message received." that was really
forgot
good.
about that.
That was a really good dynamic to have.
Totally.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was also like, nope, you're completely right. I'm not going to get down to the mouth about this. I'm crapping on. Okay, I'll cut to the chase. I started talking to this dude, and we were just talking. Like we were just chatting. He was like 35, bit taller than me, like grey hair, good looking guy, and really friendly. Twigged that he was gay, probably like half an hour into the conversation, maybe a little later than I should have, and realized maybe that was why he had so much time for me. Maybe he was interested. And I'm into that. I'm not worried about that. I'm like, hey, I don't as long as someone's paying attention to me, I don't really care. But it hadn't occurred to me. The dick sucking hadn't occurred to me at that point. But we're just talking, we're hanging out, it was having a really good time, and ended up pretty much just kind of hanging out all night, having a few chats with different people. But we kind of stuck together. Need to think of a pseudonym for him. What about just call him David?
What about Silver Fox? Because you said he had grey hair, but he's still young.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that I feel like David is more humanizing. Silver Fox.
All right. Okay. Anyway, he's the dick that you fucked. So let's just get to the chase.
Silver Fox. He wasn't just a gay archetype to me. He was a whole person.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Albeit a silver foxy one. So we're just chatting, hanging out, and then and I was just getting on the beers and taking some dexies and stuff, and getting pretty I guess pretty dopamine-y and pretty sort of pretty friendly. And then at some point the night just wore on. Then it was 4 a.m. and down to the last dozen people at the party, and we're all just in this back room, and me and David are just hanging out talking, and then I'm giving him a massage because I'm getting really handsy on the speed, and just kind of really loving the feeling of his body, and that's something that's very far removed from gayness to me. I love grabbing touching a male body and feeling the muscles.
Yeah, you're very tactile.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
man beef. It's great.
Hey, Babe Towns. So sorry to interrupt, but I simply had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that you've got to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the potty to mingle in. And there you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies or discounts for offerings from guests who've been interviewed on the podcast, inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, and support from a community of labial legends. I also have an account on the fab new app Sunroom, which is a platform created by women for women and non-binary folk, and where there's no shadow banning or censorship of sex-positive content, unlike with the other platforms that I'm on. So you can hit up my Sunroom for extra content and real and raw life updates, because I'll be sharing on there from now on all of the stuff that I can't post anywhere else. My vision for both of these is that they become really supportive, educational, and hilarious resources for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions that you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes and I'll hopefully see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
And we're just talking, and then and I was behind him, he's sitting down. And then we ended up having a little kiss, and it was okay. I still didn't really think anything of it. well, actually, no, that might have been the point that I did, where like, he was telling that him and his partner have like, sort of an ethically non-monogamous thing. And then I was just like, okay, well, you know what? And pretty much had the same conversation as what I had with old mate at Meredith, like 7 years prior. I was like, so I'm straight. Always open with, I'm straight.
And he's like, sure.
No. I think he got it.
And it sounds so much like the classic trope of like, the toxic mask dude at the truck stop sucking a dick and then being like, yeah, but like I'm straight though, I'm straight, and the gay guy being like, yep, okay, cool, like I'm gonna go along with it, otherwise you might beat the shit out of me because of your like internalized shame around, and like homophobia. Like I know that that's not the case, but it does sound like that on paper.
Absolutely, and that is kind of that was actually it. That was the joke, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm not gay though. No homo though.
Yeah, there was a hint of irony to me saying that. It was like, I'm not gay, but how about something gay, you and me? How about we do something gay together? So I'm like, so I'm straight. Here's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm pretty interested in like exploring male bodies and kind of exploring that part of my sexuality and seeing what there is to be seen there. And like, I'm pretty interested in dicks. What about like on some occasion, I come around, hang out with you and your partner, we have some drinks and have a good time, and then like I suck your dicks and
2 for 1,
and and 2 for 1, and he was like, most graciously of him, he was like, oh yeah, I'll have a chat to him, but I reckon that sounds great. I reckon we could do that. And I'm just like, what a sweet man, so kind of him to open up his home to me and to open up this conversation with his partner. So gracious of him. Things kind of entered into a bit of a haze around this time, and we went out the back, and we were sort of standing around. Like at this point, it was like 6 a.m. or something. We're standing around out the back, like making out, and then I think it just occurred to both of us at the same time, like, why not suck a dick now? Sat him down on the couch, got his pants off, to kind of unhook the pants. Anyway, it's not important. Got it out, and it was a lovely penis. Like, right. I haven't seen, I don't know actually if I've seen many like fully engorged dicks up close, like in my life. Like seen plenty in porn, and those ones, that's a little uninteresting because they're generally the same kind of massive Gatorade bottle fucking things. But seeing just a normal dick, like I've seen a lot of vulvas, and like the variety just opens your eyes to the fact that there is a fucking variety. There's like such a diverse array of them, and like, they're all special. And but with dicks, like I haven't seen enough to kind of have that same kind of beauty sort of mindset towards the beauty of it all. Like, it was a nice looking dick and smaller than mine. So
does that make you feel good?
Yeah, it was like, and which is fortunate too, because
it would have been too hard to suck if it was
to fillet.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a huge dick is. I have a small mouth, but like, you don't really want a massive dick, to be honest.
No, like, especially if your interests are purely to fillet it. Why the fuck would you want it to be big? I mean, maybe if you want to, you want it to get down there into the, what's it called, the vagus.
Oh yeah. Yeah, get the gag reflex happening so that you tone your vagus nerve. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But you don't need it to be thick for those purposes. Anyway, it was a nice dick. It was a really nice dick. It was probably about the same length as mine and like a little narrower. Just sort of, I kind of realized when I was down there, this is actually like an experience I had jacking someone off for money a couple of years ago.
I forgot about that.
Where I Yeah, yeah. Where it's like I grabbed the dick, and was confused for a moment, and then I was like, wait a second, I fucking know how these work. And then on that occasion, the dude went from being flaccid to ejaculating in like 15 seconds, and then I was leaving the room with someone else's cum on my hands. With someone else's cum on one of my hands and $100 in my other hand.
Fuck yeah, right on.
It was so good. Anyway, it was a little bit like that. It's like I got down there and I was like, I know this shit. And also, like, I've long held the belief that that in terms of nerve endings and sensitivities and like a lot of things, like, you know, vulvas and dicks are like just different forms of the exact same thing, really. And that's the approach that I took in the kind of like the external kind of oral sex. Before I put the thing in my mouth, that's kind of the approach that I took to it, where I was like, I know, like, there's this sort of like this nerve cluster here that's kind of, you know, basically like a clitoris, you know. It's like a similar sort of thing. Maybe it's a similar sort of approach to this. Did all the things that I like, you know, and they all seemed to work. And it was like that sort of empathic touch thing, like where you know, I could sort of project my own sensations onto what I was doing with a lot of accuracy because I got a dick. I know what it feels like.
Totally. And were you nervous, like, before you kind of like approached it, and as it was getting closer, like, were you nervous at all, or were you eager, or were you just kind of curious? Like, what kind of headspace were you in?
Well, since everything flowed so organically into that moment, there wasn't really a chance to be like, oh, like, do I feel comfortable? Drugs and alcohol certainly helped kind of get past some things. I did feel a bit of a like, oh, but it was a sort of like, well, here we go, in for a penny, in for a pound. Like, you know, I'm here now. Like, I've been thinking about this for years. Like, and this is perfect. Like, I really like this dude. He's really lovely. Like, he's got a lovely dick. But somehow after like partying all night, his dick was like
immaculate,
very approachable and like
nice.
Yeah. It was like, you know, it was very like, you know, it smelt nice.
Yeah.
And like,
I was wondering,
it was
I was
very
like,
inviting.
You know, when it's a surprise BJ after a whole night partying and drinking and taking drugs, it's like, you can't depend on that dick being clean and approachable. Like, I was thinking, surely there's going to be some smell or some dick cheese. Like, who knows when this guy lasts? He must just be a pretty hygienic guy. But yeah, I would be like definitely nervous about the state of that like unknown dick, you know? So you lucked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clean dick energy.
Yeah, I really
Love
fucking
that.
did. Yeah, absolutely. He actually did have clean dick energy.
Nice.
Which is really funny because that's absolutely a thing.
Definitely, dude.
Some people have clean dick energy.
Big time. Okay, so like, what were tell us about the things that were particularly, you know, seeming to work. Like, what kind of little tips and techniques did you employ that you're like, that feels good for me, so I'm going to give that a go? Like, talk us through the actual, the nitty gritty of the blowy.
Right. Well, it's all about, and this is pretty much just me describing what I like done to me,
Nice.
because it's the exact same thing as like what I thought he might like and what he did seem to like. Was just it's almost like you tune the intensity of your touch to like how hard the dick is, because like the hardness of the dick you know, like has a lot to do, like the sensitivity is kind of informed by that. For me, like if I'm like, you know, if I've got like a semi on the way to an erection, or if like I am like flaccid at the beginning of a blowjob, I prefer it to be like very delicate, very gentle, getting in there and start trying to drum up drum up an erection by like, you know, being really aggressive about it. That's dumb. That's shit. And I think that like the exact same principle applies to vulvas and vaginas and stuff too. It's basically the same thing. It's the same trajectory of like sensation. Start small, you know, and and get the dick going. And I've got this whole sort of theory. It's more than a theory. It's just a truth, really, about you can get an erection, right? And it's this myth that like that is sort of, okay, that's erection, like that there's the arousal, whatever. But it's like the erection needs to be conditioned. That's the word that I use for it, which is basically just sort of like massaged and eased in, like the initial sensitivity, like the initial kind of edge is taken off, and then it's like the dick is ready to be pleasured. It's not just a simple matter of it being erect. Like you can get these really like hard, tight little erections straight off the bat, and it's like, I need it to be kind of caressed and like and sort of relaxed a bit, and then eased into it, and then like it generally, because you can get so fucking hard that it hurts. And it's better to then kind of have the erectile tissue kind of like massaged, and it kind of releases a bit.
Limber it up.
The erection will become like limber it up. Yeah. That's basically it. It's basically like warming it up.
Yeah, just a bit of yoga.
Yeah. So yeah, everything that I started with was external. Like he was probably, when we got it out, he was probably like about like 75% erect. And yeah, so it was just a lot of like, tracing my tongue over his like scrot up like the underside of the dick to like, a very succulent, very wet, like, very just, when I'm having my penis filleted, I just love it to be this soft, wet thing. I don't actually like suction. I think that, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but suction, like that real kind of like kind of stuff like that doesn't feel good. That hurts. Like if the suction, if you're tautening up your mouth and making basically the inside of your mouth like sort of hard and like and making your lips really tight. It depends on the dick, of course. It depends on what like some people like toothy blowjobs, for example. But for me, I like it to be like very soft. I like it. I guess if anything, to feel more like a vagina does, which is like the nicest, the most wonderful sensation.
So wet, sloppy,
and
soft. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Oh, a sloppy BJ. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, what amazing. Anyway, so like it was all it was all like pretty external up until this point. And that's also, for me, I quite like that with blowjobs. I like there to be an element of like, getting it like into the mouth and like, into the throat even. But it like just as a part of it, like that being the main kind of event is not really for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of how I played it with him. In a lot of ways, it was kind of like I was sucking my own dick, which actually it was very much like that in a way. Righting all the wrongs of all the bad blowies I've had over the years. I'm kidding. I've had most, actually, I would say almost every time someone's put their mouth on my dick, it's been it's been amazing. Lucky in that sense. And then I was like, all right, time to do the thing and like see about getting it into my mouth.
Oh, we're here for.
I was just like, yep, okay, let's go. And I was just like,
excuse the interruption, my loves, but I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab. And the more people who get to hear it, the more people it can help. Reviews and ratings help me curry favour with the algorithmic gods and get suggested to other listeners to check out. Plus, they make me feel really good and appreciated as I continue to pour my heart and soul into creating this baby for you. And I promise I don't mazz over them or anything. I mostly just tuck them away for a rainy day when I'm filled with self-doubt and existential dread about being self-employed, which is fairly frequently. So you see, leaving a review really does make a difference, and it's an easy little act of support that you can take in just a minute or two by either going to Spotify and leaving 5 stars for the show, or writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Choose your poison, or if you're a real overachiever, you could do both. Whoa now. If you are writing a review, though, just be sure to only use G-rated words, because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't actually show up. Lame. Anyway, what was that? Oh, you're going to go do it right now while I wait. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a great idea. May as well just quickly click that 5-star button before we get on with it and, forget about it and get on with your day. I'm hearing them roll in. I'm hearing those 5 stars. Oh my God, I make myself cringe. Anyway, thank you, Muchly. You're a total gem, and I'll let you get back to the episode now.
I was just like, it seemed to not go that far into my mouth before it triggered this gag reflex, and I was just like, sorry. Like a trooper, I got right back in there. Actually, I think sort of made a bit of a display of, for my own amusement and I guess his enjoyment, sort of like, recoiling from this, this gagging, like I was going to throw up. And then as soon as, just in an instant, as soon as that feeling had passed, like a split second later, like getting it back in there, getting ravenous about it, like, gotta have that dick in my throat, even if it makes me throw up. And he really enjoyed that. He was really way into that. And I was trying to get it, sort of as far in there. And, I guess that was the part of it that was most confusing for me, because everything up until that point was like, it seemed like all of my theories over the years were pretty accurate, and what I was trying to achieve, I was achieving, and it all felt like how I imagined it would feel for me. Mm-hmm. Putting a dick in my mouth, it was different to what I expected. I think, because I think that when people put a dick in their mouth and it feels really good, it has this sensation of, being kind of vagina-like you're putting into this wet, warm, succulent passage, and it's sort of, you feel like your dick is fully encompassed. This is making me pretty toey, to be honest, talking about this. But naturally, if you have the mouth, then it doesn't exactly feel like that to you. It feels like something cylindrical is intruding upon like a fairly odd shaped kind of cavity, which is your mouth. There's teeth to get out of the way. There's your soft palate, and it's all, So it was kind of like my theories didn't check out there. It was a pretty kind of foreign sensation. He really liked that bit, and I felt like glad for pretty much like the exact dick that he had was perfect to be doing this with. Good dick to suck it on, because it was like, it was a good length. You could really, there was plenty to work with, but didn't have that like stonking girth factor to it that would just be like, okay, what the fuck? What am I even supposed to do with this?
Definitely limits what you can do, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you enjoy it? Like, was it a turn on to you, or was it more just like kind of interesting and you were more focused on giving him pleasure than like feeling any turn on in yourself?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't turned on. Like, not in that way, like, not in the same way as if I'm like, kissing a nice, sweet little vulva or something. It wasn't like that. It was like it was all the other parts of sex that I find so rewarding were present, aside from, me being turned on. I was bringing someone pleasure. I love doing that. Mm-hmm. Someone was completely focused on me and what I was doing, and they're attracted to me. Love that. Mm-hmm.
I think like novelty is also just a turn on sometimes. Like that's what I found. It's like I wasn't actually turned on by the woman per se. It was more just like, oh, this is a little bit taboo or a little bit like out of the ordinary for me, or it's, you know, it's very novel and mysterious, and that is kind of hot or exciting.
Absolutely. That was a thing too. And like, you know, when I think about it, it's like, now that I've done that, do I feel as inclined to do that again? I think I would do it again. I think there is more to explore, but certainly the novelty of it was a big thing. It was like, can't believe I'm doing this, and like this real desire to do a good job, you know, to do it right. Because they're really, you know, there's something to be said for like how he made me feel very comfortable, and how I laid out like all of my needs, like exactly where I stand, what my deal is to him. And he was like, yep. And he just abided by all of that, and like made me feel really, you know, so I wanted to make him feel good. There's something else actually worth mentioning as well, which is that, so he's like taller than me, he's but probably a similar build to me, but like taller, bit like broader, kind of like larger, and older, and maybe in a lot of ways more masculine.
Role reversal.
And yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, like, you know, so
just picking your nose. Nice.
Yeah, forgot we're on video. Yeah, well, it was kind of like, so there's like a dynamic of, you know, those two sort of energies, you know, I guess masculine and feminine. And they can be in different proportions depending on what's going on. And yeah, like a lot of my heterosexual encounters put me pretty firmly in the masculine, only really because like my partners have been like incorrigibly feminine. I'm pretty fluid. Like I don't need to be like that masculine kind of, which I suppose what you would say that's like kind of taking the lead, you know, the control or whatever, things you would attribute to masculinity.
I mean, there's also something to be said for just like regardless of your sort of masculine or feminine balance within you energetically or your behavior or whatever with someone, if you're male-bodied, you're physically stronger and potentially larger. And even if you're not larger, you're still probably physically stronger. Like statistics, just, you know, it's rule of thumb. So like, regardless of the masculine, feminine stuff and the, you know, maybe the submissive, dominant, like power balance, you're mostly in your hetero dalliances, you're always going to be physically stronger and potentially able to overpower someone. Not that you would, but that's something that's always like underneath the surface or in the background of these like dynamics. And so for you to be with like a guy who's older, more mature, he's, you know, had more experience in life, he's also more familiar with gayness and that sort of territory of like gay sexuality than you are. So he's like experienced in that sense. He's larger, he's probably stronger, taller, makes you feel smaller and more petite. All of these things like super new territory for you in terms of the dynamic with someone in like a sexual sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's exactly it. Like I don't think I've ever been in a sexual situation where someone made me feel like small, petite, you know. And I didn't exactly feel petite. I don't know if I can feel that way. I'm a fairly tall, fairly large person, but he's even larger. And that was the feeling. Like there was this point before we got into the blowy where like we were like standing there, standing behind me, and I was like holding his dick and sort of like we were like kissing over my shoulder. And it was like, I've been in that pretty much that exact same sort of stance, like standing, like I'm standing behind like a partner, they're like holding my dick and we're kind of kissing over their shoulder and like I'm probably squeezing a titty or something. knowing me.
Oh my God, seedy bastard.
And then I was quote unquote the girl in that situation. And it did, yeah, like it felt so different. It felt really beautiful, actually. I think that might be like the real, you know, beyond dicks and genders and like gayness, straightness, whatever. That was the thing that was most significant about that, and that I would probably come back for, because my hetero life can't really give me that, you know, and that's a big part of me. Like I'm pretty feminine, I think.
And there's something just so fucking special. Like it's such a gift sometimes to just feel safe enough to surrender to like somebody else's power or strength or whatever, and just know that like they could just pick you up and chuck you over their shoulder, or they could like scoop you up and, you know, maneuver you around on the bed. And that's like something that I really enjoy. And I've spoken about it on this podcast before. Like I enjoy being maneuvered, and I don't like being like forced or treated roughly. I don't like pain. I don't like being dominated, but I do really like someone being able to kind of like pick me up and, you know, me wrap my legs around them and them sort of just maneuver me to the bedroom or on the bed or whatever, and also just to feel kind of small and to feel like I'm being manhandled a little bit. Like if I'm getting a massage from Lockie, like I really like him to like move me around and my limbs, and sort of I'm just like a floppy rag doll, and it's super relaxing if you feel safe enough to allow someone to just move your body around like that physically. And you know, you probably wouldn't get that treat of an experience very often, so it's beautiful. It's probably why it was so important for you as well, like part of why it was so important to feel really safe with someone before you explored sexuality with a man, because you know that physical element is definitely going to be in the back of your mind, you know, if someone's larger than you and it's unknown territory for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally feel what you're saying. Yeah, like like it's a beautiful thing to be the physically like weaker, but for there to be such trust that you can surrender. Yeah, that's what it was. And he was fucking great. Like he was so great. Like I feel really grateful. You know, again, I've got to curb that gratitude because I was the one performing the act. I guess I'm grateful to my fortune that I should have someone like that. You know, there was no like hand on the back of the head bullshit.
Yeah. Well, do you know what this reminds me of? Sorry to cut you off. This reminds me of when before we started dating and we were just playing in bands together, you and I had confided in you before I started all the work with sexuality that I was super traumatized and terrified to suck a dick. And you know, there's more nuance than that, but I remember being on the train on the way into the city to go to a gig, and you were like, you know what, like I just, if there's anything like I can do to like help you with that situation, and I was like, oh yeah, like doing me a solid, offering a safe dick to suck. That's so nice of you. And that's not even really what you were offering at the time. But then when we did start dating,
I will nobly put my dick forward.
Yeah, and then that was totally the role that you played in like the healing that I needed to do around that fear. And even it's a win-win. It's not like you were doing me a solid. Like you know, you were getting plenty out of that as well. And I think there's also something really special about being bestowed with somebody's vulnerability and trust. Like the fact that I was like, not only were you getting your dick sucked and this guy was getting his dick sucked, but like we both put trust in, you know, in you. You'd put trust in him, I'd put trust in you to like hold space for kind of a pretty vulnerable and novel exploration that was going to benefit us purely if it was a safe space. Do you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have been a positive experience for either of us if we'd been trying to do that with someone who wasn't a safe space. And so the fact that you provided that for me, he provided that for you is like really beautiful as a gift to us, but it's also a gift to, you know, to him. It was a gift to you because that's like massive. The feeling that someone's putting their trust in you and they feel safe enough to be vulnerable with you is like really special, and it makes you feel fucking good about yourself. So it's a win-win. It's a two-way street with this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really was an honor. So, you know, I don't take that for granted at all.
And so, like, I want to know, have you had any moments or pangs of, like, I call it like a shame hangover, you know, remnants of like conditioning or toxic masculinity or homophobia that isn't at all, doesn't belong to you, but might be, you know, might be deeply rooted just from the culture that you've grown up in? Has there been any moments of like, oh my fucking God, like, oh, I'm a bit uncomfortable with that, or like, what does that mean? Or are you just pretty like, you're in such a sex positive bubble and queer positive bubble. I imagine it's been pretty smooth sailing, but has there been any like little moments of like, ooh?
Somewhat uninterestingly, I feel nothing but pride.
Nice.
And that's my fucking privilege, hey?
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah. But yeah, so just to cut back to the BJ, there's not really that much more to say. But so, you know, got to the point where it was like we're sort of in the we're in the third act. You know, actually it really is like sort of there is a sort of 3-act structure to it.
Gives one blowjob, gets it down to the fine art of a 3-act sort of performance.
I'm a real student of the blowy.
Oh my God.
Fucking gobologist. I'm going to think about that later. I'm not going to bore you.
Please,
bore you and ruin your podcast by like getting into that now. But anyway, we're in the third act. And so it was sort of like the like, let's bring it home kind of bit. And it was like, to get the complete experience here, I'm really going to have to cop a load down the throat. Like, there's just, you know, I didn't come here to be like, ew. Like, so I, you know, started working a bit harder at achieving that. It wasn't really happening. And then he was like, here, maybe if I like give it a go. He gave it a pretty good go too with his hand. While I was sort of like, you know, with my like lips on like the tip of it. He's like jacking off and I'm like, he's like a water bubbler. But like, you know, he'd had some MD and some other shit. And like, you know, it was actually, you know, I think a credit to him that he managed to
get an erection at all.
And maintain a erection for so long. Yeah. But he wasn't going to be getting off. And that actually is the closest thing to any kind of shame that I felt around the whole thing, is that I couldn't get him there. But I think that's something, you know, I can check that whole kind of that whole mentality. Like,
that was, you know, more
you got to check that. You can't be like going, yeah. It's like,
and also
you can't always make everyone come.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's like also something that is interesting. If people haven't heard Max and I, like our podcast, we did a 2-part episode. It was all TMI stories. It's called Battle of the Exes, TMI Wars, and it's probably the most fucking raw dog episode I've ever done. Some people couldn't even get through it all, so I dare you go back and find that. But what you'll have,
couldn't get through it.
Some people gave up, at the pumpkin story and the eating cum. So
oh, these fucking little babies.
Obviously just so sexually oppressed. Funny. But what I love about something that we learned about Max in those episodes is like, so Max is like, well, if I'm expecting, you know, my partners to like suck my dick and eat my jizz or like cop a load in their mouth, then like I wouldn't want to expect them to do that unless I could do that too. So like he's taken to eating his own cum. And I'll let you listen.
Exactly, but yeah.
No, they can go back and listen to the episode to get all of the context. But basically, like, there's this really kind of like maybe misguided, maybe noble, who fucking knows, but this intention behind like wanting to be, not ask something of someone that you wouldn't do yourself or expect, them to do something that you're not comfortable with. And I think like the fact that you being pretty darn straight and taking it upon yourself to experience what it's like to suck a dick is like a little bit of an extension of that, of like, okay, well, now I understand exactly what my female partners are up against when they're sucking my dick. And then I think you've just experienced a very relatable scenario where like you're putting in the work, you're doing the thing, you're probably really wanting to please this partner. You're thinking, maybe if it's not a really trusted, safe person, you're probably thinking like, oh fuck, I really need to get them off, or they're not going to like me, or they're going to think I'm shit at blowjobs, or like whatever. There's so many insecurities, especially like a lot of women and younger women feel around the pressure to make a guy come, that when you can't and it's not happening, and then there's this sort of like pressurized situation of like, oh my God, like they're not coming, and then they're like, oh, why can't I come? Like you've just experienced such a relatable situation that so many people have been in. And I think that that's valuable as well,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, yeah, fuck, like you get the exact same thing, like trying to make vulvas and vaginas and stuff have orgasms too. Guess it sort of wasn't news in that kind of way, except that I suppose like, and this is something I think that maybe I have a slightly skewed mentality on, because in my head it's a lot easier to make dicks come.
It is.
Okay, so it is.
Yeah, it is. That's why I didn't compare it to like the expectation or pressure of making a vulva or a vagina come, because like one, socially and culturally, it's nowhere near as commonly expected, and there's not as much pressure on that because it's just generally accepted that like the woman's going to come less of the time and it's harder and it takes longer. So like whatever. And sex, the sort of successful conclusion of sex is generally seen as ejaculation from the male. Like, unfortunately, that's just like the general narrative. So like you're kind of experiencing that from the side of like most women, most straight women.
There you go.
Yeah. Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also have a Sunroom profile over on the Sunroom app, as I've mentioned. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps, because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
But yeah. Yeah, and then eventually we kind of went, yeah, well, we've had fun. Went back inside. Everyone had these faint smiles on their faces. And I was like, did someone come outside to see what was going on? Or did they just, I guess in hindsight, actually, it's like we just disappeared out the back for ages and came back later. Like,
with mad pash rash.
Like you could probably guess. Yeah. Oh, I know. I forgot to mention that mid blowjob, I got distracted for a moment thinking about how I was going to get home because I was out in fucking Baldwin.
Wow.
And I was like, And I was like, well, can you get me an Uber home later? And he's like, yeah.
Oh my God.
It's pretty funny.
Oh,
and
wow.
then we all went to Crown, and I won a bunch of money at Crown at 8 a.m.
Oh my God, what a fucking
like,
raucous night. That's so, like,
it was
DJs in
fucking
bowling,
great.
Crown, gambling, you're loose, cunt.
Yeah, totally. My first BJ, my first time at Crown, my first time having fun in Baldwin.
Totally. That's rare.
Yeah, really, it had it all.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I haven't exchanged a few text messages with David. You know, I don't know, like might queue something up at some point.
You could go suck his partner's dick and check that out. You just get a bit more variety, a bit more experience, see what that's like. Maybe they'd suck your dick. That could be cool. That would, if I were you, that would be next on my bucket list. It's like, all right, I've sucked a dick now. Now I want a dude to suck my dick. Because imagine how good they would be at BJ's. I bet gay guys are incredible at BJ's.
Probably. Well, actually, it could be a bit of a risk because I think that it would probably feel like, you know,
better?
In general, like better.
Dude, I think you're turning.
I mean, like, you know, no, I'm straight. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that you're right, though. That would be next. What me and David did talk about actually was a scenario where, like, I'm doing the blowies and like both of them are present at all times.
Yeah.
Like, you know, one watching me suck off the other and then the other, and then all they have to do is decide who goes first.
Sounds like an ideal situation
and
for them.
Like, yeah, totally. He's like, yeah, that sounds good. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that he'd be into that. It's like, no fucking shit. Like, why wouldn't he be? Like,
oh.
But yeah, super good vibe overall. Feel really good about it all. Feel really glad to have someone like you to talk to about it and to kind of
unpack it on a podcast.
Unpack it. Full public view.
Oh, I mean, my podcast is a safe space.
Baby listeners can't handle this. Who can't handle the notion of someone fucking a pumpkin? It's like so innocuous. If that person's listening,
it was a friend of mine. I'll tell her. I mean, I'll get her onto this one, and we can see. You might get some hate mail. Who knows? Maybe she'll revisit the episode and just fucking drink a cup of concrete beforehand. And something. So something that I super appreciate about you is like the openness to just be comfortable enough and fluid enough to explore these things and be generous with talking about it, because that really does help destigmatize and normalize and release shame. But also, as we have said, incredibly privileged little bubble that you live in where it's safe to do that, and you don't have any sort of shame or latent homophobia or whatever getting in the way. You live in a culture where you're not going to get fucking stoned to death or, hung or lynched or whatever. And it's not that simple and easy for so many people who are genuinely actually queer. And also something that I kind of contended with, which is interesting because people seem to have really different takes on it. And I think among lesbians and gay people, it's very different. But when I was like, oh, wow, maybe I'm like queer now. I fucking kissed a girl. It was dope. Oh my God. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's explore this. And then I was like, hang on though. I don't want to be, because I think it's quite common, especially among women, although I don't know. It's quite common to be like, oh, well, I'm like pretty straight and stuff. And I'm like not really at risk of actually having feelings or falling for like a chick, but I just want to explore that for my own curiosity. And will you be my experiment? Like, can I experiment with you and explore queer sexuality with you as like a casual / part-time thing, and then go back to my little safe hetero bubble and get married and have kids and like leave you to be full-time queer. You know, I feel like I've spoken to some people, some lesbians who are like, I just fucking hate that vibe when like, you know, these little fucking woo girls are like, oh my God, like I'm going to explore my sexuality and they want to experiment with you. But like then, you know, they actually have no investment or feelings or whatever. And they like, I don't really like feeling like I am a novelty that someone's experimenting with. However, I feel like, and this is like also just this entire podcast is like two very fucking straight people talking about queerness, which I feel like there's a lot of holes in all of this and my knowledge and my my right or my ability to actually speak on this. But from like, I do have a lot of gay friends and like from the sounds of it, it's a little bit more common and even sought after in the gay community to like turn a straight guy. And so that's more of a conquest. And they're more like I know a lot of gay guys who are like, I pretty much only find myself attracted to straight dudes. And it's like very appealing and alluring to like think that I could like maybe turn him. And so they want to be experimented with, you know, it's a different vibe. But I was always just kind of wary of, I don't know, just being so like privileged and entitled that I'm like, yeah, like I have the freedom to explore my fluidity, my sexuality, and I'm going to use you because you're an experienced queer person who's actually had to do the slog of growing up in this marginalized minority, because, you know how to eat pussy and you know what it's like to kind of, you know, be gay. So like, can you show me and can I experiment on you? You know, like just like a bit wary of that whole thing, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're totally right. It's something I hadn't particularly thought about, but I suppose I feel glad in hindsight how much me and David talked before we did it, because I think that sort of thing, like, is, you know, a matter of communication, like bordering on consent. Perhaps like it is absolutely a matter of consent going into it, being like, here's what I'm about, here's what I'm doing. If you're down with that, then like we could do this thing. And then, you know, instead of coming into it, yeah, because like that sounds like there could be some pretty difficult sort of situations if someone's like, you know, two people of like, you know, of the same gender or whatever meet, and like they're doing this thing, and then one of them was actually just kind of taking the other for a ride to kind of, so they'd have some stories to talk about when they're older or something. That's bad. Doesn't sound good at all. I think it's a matter of, it's got to just, like, so many of these things just come down to fucking actually having a proper conversation about it. But I feel as though in my experience of like, you know, queer mates, you know, and that's just my own personal scope, I can corroborate what you're talking about. Like my gay mates who get around, like queer male friends who get around, if they're just hooking up with someone, they're like, it can be like, to an extent, like a kind of a kink, that it's like a straight guy who's like, you know, or someone who's, anyway.
Totally. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I feel like we should wrap it up there. We've just spent over an hour talking about a blowjob, which I'm down with. I'm here for it, and I hope my listeners are too. But yeah, do you have anything to add before we wrap up the telling of Max's first blowjob?
Well, stay tuned for the episode on my first receival of a blowjob. Totally. Down with that. And thanks for listening, and thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. You should send David this podcast when it comes out, potentially.
I don't know about that.
Anyway, thank you so much for giving us a massive earful of TMI and sort of sexuality bending excitement. Stay tuned, everyone, for the next installment, which I'm sure there will be.
In 7 years. Another 7 years.
Later.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it, darling hearts. thank you for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. And in the meantime, if you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch, because that, my dear, is a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism. And you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. Also, I'm always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, or guest suggestions. So feel free to get in touch via my website at freyagraph.com or say hey over on Insta. My handle is Freya_graph_YMT, and I seriously hope you're following me on there, because damn, we have fun. We have fun. Anyway, later labial legends. I'll see you next time.